Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the This Week in Coworking podcast. Today we have a fantastic, insightful, and inspirational guest. We are joined today by Dr. Tammira Lucas, who is not only a co-working space founder and a professor and a venture growth advisor, but also has this underlying passion and advocacy for supporting women in business, especially moms. Dr. Lucas, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm amazing. It's raining outside, but I am excited and happy, and it's a little warm, so I'm great.
Yeah, absolutely. I looked outside the window just before we jumped in this call, and it was raining sideways. And I'm like, what a fantastic way to spend an afternoon learning from someone like you. So thanks for joining us. I wanted to start a little bit before your co-working story. No one wakes up as a kid one day and is like, oh, I want to create a co-working space. Or at least not our generation or the generations before us. Maybe the next generation will say, hey, when I grow up, I want to run a co-working space. But we didn't have that for sure. So what was your co-working story? And what got you to that day in November 2016 and you were like, I'm going to create a co-working space?
So that is a great question. And my co-working story actually begins way before, of course, we opened our space in 2016. For the last 10 years, I've been providing entrepreneur support, training, and resources and advocacy to mom entrepreneurs. And I grew up in Baltimore. So if you guys are familiar, I'm pretty certain that most people are familiar with Baltimore and all of the things that occur in Baltimore. And I was really focused on helping these women moms from underserved communities really create generational wealth through entrepreneurship, something that I wasn't taught, something that wasn't glorified or talked about during my childhood journey. And so we created a program called Moms as Entrepreneurs, which provides that entrepreneurship training. And moms always wanted more, right? They're like, okay, I'm done this training. What else do I do? In addition, I'm pretty certain for those that are parents, you understand the cost of childcare. And the cost is the same amount of buying a Tesla every single year. And so there was this problem in my head that I was trying to solve. And that problem was, how do we ask moms from underserved communities that are living below the poverty level to invest in business while paying the high cost of childcare? Because you cannot get financial support in the state of Maryland anyway, if you're not working a job. And they weren't considering entrepreneurship working a job at that time or even at this time. And so I have been introduced to co-working spaces through Impact Hub Baltimore, but Impact Hub is like a national brand. And I love that idea, but it just wasn't conducive to children. And so I woke up one night and I said, I got it. And my husband was like, what is it that you have? And I said, how can we merge co-working with childcare, similar to your gym model? And so the unique part about our co-working space is that we provide on-site babysitting services. I didn't want to provide a daycare because that's not solving a problem, right? That's just not even putting a Band-Aid on a problem. It is just adding to the actual problem. And so I wanted to create something that was similar to your gym where you can work out, focus on your physical and mental health, but don't have the pressure of childcare, especially for children that's between the ages of 0 and 5 that may not be in school. And so that idea came around in 2012. It was a whole year of research and a year of finding the perfect location. But that's really how my co-working journey got started, was really trying to provide a solution to a problem that already existed for a long time.
Totally get that. And as someone who had to juggle a whole bunch of childcare when I was like the stay-at-home dad for a bit, it's one of those challenges. And I don't even know where to start with my next question. But from what you've seen and from the wins you've had over the last almost 8 years now,
Yes.
have you figured out the magic sauce? And if it is, can we bottle it and give it to everyone?
I had figured out the magic sauce, and I think the magic is really finding how to build a sustainable business model overall. And a lot of newcomers or even existing co-working space owners design their co-working space, I think that many of them lack the understanding of how to build a business model that's not reliant on one stream of income. And so for us, we figured out like how to really develop a strong business model as well as minimize costs. What is important to the membership versus what is important to you? And so one of the things that I would strongly suggest, especially for those that are looking to incorporate childcare or some form of childcare in their co-working space, is to really do customer discoveries and figure out exactly what it is that your particular target audience is looking for, and you design around that. And a lot of business owners don't understand that. And when I'm coaching or consulting entrepreneurs and I say customer discoveries, it's like, oh, you're asking me to do another thing. But that thing is extremely important because it's ultimately going to help you design exactly what it is that your audience is looking for.
I love that. And we're going to absolutely get to how you're both helping small businesses and startups and scale ups as a consultant, but also as a professor. But sticking with the kind of co-working business model and the magic sauce that you have bottled up at the Cube, what does your daycare babysitting / service look like? Like if I'm a prospective member, what do I pay? What do I get? What are your kind of unit economics around that? As much as you're willing to share with other readers.
So it's a pay as you go model. It is $10 an hour to provide those services, with typically on average, our members are staying 3 hours. We didn't want to design something that our members felt like they were underutilizing the service that they were paying for. And so
Yeah.
again, that comes with knowing your audience and knowing as much about them as possible. And so it's nothing that anyone can't incorporate. I think that it's just the implementation part of that and how you go about with minimizing the cost to be able to do that as well.
Again, that's just absolutely not replacing a traditional daycare or full-time cover. It's more for in between things and you said it's only up until 5 years old, or is
No,
that
we
just,
actually take kids at various ages, but we know that our target audience is really those that have children from 0 to 5, because typically at 5, you're going to go to school full time. We also have parents that homeschool, right? And so we don't have a cap on our childcare, but we do know that typically the age range is between 0 and 5.
good. And then as it's pay as you go, are they kind of pre-booking it? Is it something they call in and hey, I need 6 hours next week? Or is it on the day they arrive and you post field them?
Yep, everything in our co-working space is managed by our co-working management system. And so just like you have to reserve a conference room, you have to reserve babysitting as well. And
Got it.
I do suggest that as a co-working space owner, that you ensure that you find a management system that's going to help you effectively manage all aspects of your company. It does take time to find which one works for you. And when you have a unique model like that, you're ultimately probably custom designing something specifically for your co-working space. So
Mhm.
yes, you do have to reserve. You can't really just drop in and utilize those particular services. You can drop in and use co-working services, but we're very structured when it comes to the babysitting services.
Makes a lot of sense, especially because of the fact you have a human capital that has to fit alongside that, or you have to have enough carers to look after however many kids are going to be coming in. And if no one's coming in, you don't really want to have that overhead. Are the carers full-time employees of the Cube, or are they like consultants,
Well, we
freelancing?
have part-time employees. We also have volunteers. We have grandparents that babysit. So, it is a unique model. It is a unique set of staff, but I think that we're solving so many problems with the staff as well as, offering that particular service.
Totally get that. And I love the fact that you managed to make it work not only as a business, but also by bringing in elements of that community and bringing in the hyperlocal. the village essentially to like support the businesses, because you're right, it is about building that generational wealth. And it's about, you know, when you co-founded the Moms Entrepreneurs, it was to fight that stigma that mothers were not able or willing to take on both challenges. And
Correct.
by creating this kind of community where the physical space and community support that mission, I thought that I'd absolutely love the successes you've had. My question is, what were the biggest setbacks, right? There's obviously, there are going to be times where things are like, where did that come from? Completely out of left field, like without getting too in the weeds. So what are the kind of gotchas that you would warn other operators around when thinking about providing this kind of service?
I think the biggest challenge that we've always had is quality human capital. And that's a challenge, honestly, right now, that's a universal challenge for any business. But I think that it has just it's literally been a challenge to find, you know, honestly, just being very transparent, great human capital, right? We're in a time, unfortunately, and I can say this because I'm a professor who is teaching the next generation, but we're in a time where critical thinking skills, the willingness to go above and beyond is just not normal anymore. And so when you take a company or an industry, a new industry like co-working, and there's so many, you're essentially managing a community, right? You're creating a space where people feel welcome, they're being supported. Like that, while those things exist and they've existed in the past, having it in this new industry is not something that people are used to, right? Like if you go to a retail store, customer service essentially is at the forefront, but in exchange for customer service, there's a product, right? But when you talk about co-working, it's a service, right? And I know for me, when I'm working in spaces, I want to be left alone, like just leave me alone. And so from a human capital standpoint, it's like, okay, well, no one wants to be bothered. Well, you still have to understand how to foster and manage a community. Like, what does everything in this space look like from the customer perspective? And kind of
Yeah.
teaching that and training individuals to understand that in the place where we are in our society has just been extremely hard, right? And for good talent, you have to pay an astronomical amount of money. And it's hard. It's really hard trying to figure out what is the middle ground to all of that and how do we develop people that really truly have a passion for
Mhm.
this particular company in the way that we're passionate about. So I think that's probably a issue that many people are having, and I do want people to understand you're not alone. We're all having this issue, and I'm sure if we could figure this out collectively, we'll all be in a better place in our co-working space business. That's honestly the one and only problem we've had over the 8 years is that human capital issue.
That's so interesting. And definitely something I keep hearing in these conversations is, yes, the level of talent, but also the shifting nature of our industry. It used to be fine that you came in, you sat at the desk, you showed people a tour around, and that was it. It was pretty much the job. You were kind of part sales, part technical support when the printer broke, and that was it. But now, especially as co-working spaces are expanding out of just renting out desks for meeting rooms to now doing virtual mail services and auxiliary services like call answering, mail management, notary services, all these additional things that kind of form this ecosystem of revenue or the revenue stack.
Mhm.
Having folks who understand that and the community is a tug of war, right? You want to upsell members, you want to generate higher LTVs and all that lovely stuff, but you also want it to feel hospitable. You want people to also. It's absolutely something, and you're completely right, Tamira. There is a need for more upskilled community managers as opposed to just folks who are taking it as that first step. Had a conversation recently with Sarah Travis over at Work Bar and kind of looking at like, what is that journey from community manager to essentially CEO, right? can we start forging career paths in co-working that isn't just community manager and then they leave co-working, right?
Mhm.
Especially now where a lot of folks from other hospitality industries are like, I don't want to work nights. I want to serve people, but I want to work during the day. What can I do that's similar? And then they discover co-working and they have to be upskilled. And if we can give them a career path, we can maintain that human capital. So
Yep.
definitely a topic that keeps coming up. And as you said, it affects so many of our businesses. But you're also in a very unique position that you're also a professor at Coppin State University, and you are training up the future generations of leaders. What overlaps do you see between these entrepreneurial students and your members? Is there any overlap? And what can we do to bring them closer together?
Yeah, there is definitely overlap, and I am blessed to be able to wear several hats, and especially being a professor, an educator. And I like to consider myself someone that is really helping to nurture the future of our society. And the good thing and the fortunate thing that I get to do is connect my students with internships and opportunities to really have that hands-on experience while they're in business school, right? And so I'm excited. Like next spring semester, I'll have some interns to come in and focus on marketing initiatives. But I get to also support my co-working members in the same way. Like if you're interested in interns, I have tons of them to offer. And I think the unique part about that is at Coppin, a lot of our students are coming from the Maryland and the Baltimore area. And so what they get to do is see how their community can be affected in a positive way through small businesses. Because I have to be very honest with you, growing up, no one really talked to me about small businesses being the economic engine of my community, right? That's not what I saw. That's not what I heard. Did they exist? They did, but it wasn't something to say, hey, we have tons of women-owned businesses or tons of minority-owned businesses in this community, and what you're doing in college and to get the experience that you need in order to be successful in whatever career, you can do that. You can help and practice, that with these small businesses.
Mhm.
And so it is a very unique opportunity that I do have. And I just love, like I had students over the weekend, we did breakfast and pictures with Santa. And so I had three of my marketing students come and just participate. And they said, thank you. Like, not only did I have a good time, but I was able to see and learn how your business operate and how you build community and how you connect with children and really enhance your brand. And so just breaking opportunities, because it's not always about them getting jobs with Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 companies. A lot of them want to impact the community. And so how do we get you to develop your skills and do that in a way where you can see the impact immediately? Because we're in a generation where they want instant gratification in whatever it is that they do. And I think this is a way for them to do that.
Yeah, I'm absolutely laughing at instant gratification because I have a 3-year-old and everything needs to be done immediately.
Immediately.
So I totally get it. And he's not even at college level or university level yet. But alongside that, you also are a venture growth advisor at TEDCO's Urban Business Innovation Initiative, in which you work extensively with the kind of Baltimore City ecosystem of businesses to identify entrepreneurs and support that. Does that also feed into kind of the work you're doing at Cube, or is it completely separate spheres of Dr. Lucas?
No, everything is actually connected, and it is actually great to be in a position that I am. Entrepreneurship 10 years ago in Baltimore looked totally different. And I got to be one of the pioneers of introducing entrepreneurship throughout the state of Maryland and specifically in Baltimore City. And TECO stands for Maryland Technology Development Corporation. And essentially, TECO has provided funding through the state of Maryland to really deploy resources and invest in Maryland-based companies. So it doesn't just focus on Baltimore, it focuses on all of the state of Maryland. And so when they wanted to solve the problem of how do we invest in more underserved companies, and especially in Baltimore. And I have a counterpart in PG County, which is really part of the state's most underserved communities. And so everyone pointed them into the direction of me because I've been able to really help foster entrepreneurship in various ways throughout the city, the state, and local counties. And so what I get to do is I get to find companies, help develop them, and provide them that support services that they need in order to get into the pipeline of funding internally at TEDCO and externally through the ecosystem. And so the work that I do at the Cube, we have TEDCO, we have all types of companies that are at the Cube. But what we also do is we have events. And so we partner with ecosystem partners to put on these events specifically to support the growth of these entrepreneurs. So whether they are tech, life science, which TEDCO focus on, or whether you're a traditional mom and pop shop, right? They can all come to our co-working space and engage in resources and network and grow. And so I don't want to say that they're separate because they all intertwine. These tech companies may be able to partner with contract-based companies or vice versa. And so it is a great place to be when you see the growth of entrepreneurs, period, in a place where you grew up, where entrepreneurship wasn't talked about, glorified, or people that look like you that came from communities like you have given the opportunity to do so. And so I'm like the fairy godmother of entrepreneurship. It's not magical. I always tell them it's not a magic wand, but it's the connections that I get to make and say, hey, TEDCO has this resource, or the University of Maryland has this resource. And guess what? They're all going to be at the Cube. And I think that you should be there so that you can tap into these resources.
That's fantastic. And I think we've just found the title of this podcast, Baltimore's Co-working Fairy Godmother. So it does make me think, because we speak to a lot of operators who are focused on serving underserved communities or supporting and lifting up. What does your membership look like, right? Have you got like bursary programs? Are these companies, these ecosystem partners providing sponsored desks or sponsored memberships? Is there anything like that you're doing to support folks who maybe can't take that first step of getting a membership?
That is a great question. So we do. So we actually partner with Morgan State University Entrepreneur Development Assistance Center and their resources. So we are actually considered the Returning Citizen Entrepreneurship Center through that partnership, which is one of our ecosystem partners. So that's funded through the SBA. And so returning citizens who are interested in entrepreneurship can actually come to the Cube and receive services for free. Of course, have a space that they can work out of to build their companies for free as well. And so, yes, we do. We are expanding our membership in 2025 to really partner with corporations to offer their employees an opportunity to work out of the Cube as well as take advantage of the babysitting services. We know that DEI is a big thing. And the moment that someone hears DEI, they automatically go to race. But that doesn't necessarily always mean race, right? It's really being inclusive. And being a mother, I think, falls underneath of that, because if I'm not able to successfully work because I lack childcare resources or support, that I just can't do it. And so I think that as corporations start to transition the verbiage that they're going to be using, because we all know that's coming down to DEI, I think that we have a unique position to be able to say, hey, when you talk about being inclusive, have you thought about your parents that are working for you and the obstacles that they're dealing with when it comes to childcare? How much of their paycheck is going towards expensive childcare if they don't necessarily have to do that? And yes, to answer your question, the example is EDAC and how we work with them, but also how we're looking to expand our partnerships and relationships in 2025.
That's great. And I just want to clarify one point for our listeners. You do mention very often moms and mother entrepreneurs who happen to be mothers. I don't like the term mompreneurs. You don't call a dadpreneur a dadpreneur. Is it strictly for moms, or is it for just folks who have childcare needs that happen to be
No, I knew
members?
that
Where's your
question.
membership?
I knew that question was coming. So when my partner and I originally started the Q, we definitely only wanted to focus on my entrepreneurs. And my husband said, well, dads have this issue too. And I said, you're absolutely right. So we focus on a parent entrepreneur. While we know majority of our membership are moms, we definitely have dads. We have families that come in together and actually work together inside of the space. And so childcare is a universal issue. Honestly, you can have single dads or even married dads that, have the responsibility of childcare and still trying to build their careers or build their businesses. I just think about how my husband and I balance over the last 14 years, my daughter, and he's a full-time entrepreneur as well. And so how do we work through that? And so it realistically, we focus on the parent entrepreneur.
I love that. But you'd also mentioned something that was expansion for next year. Now, everything we're seeing across almost every co-working industry, and especially the successful ones that have been around for 5+ years, are exploring expansions. You currently at the Q Co-work are the largest Black woman-owned co-working space in the United States. When can we expect more cubes?
Well, you can expect it soon. We are working through the expansion plan. We are actually purchasing the building that we are currently in. So that process has definitely been a process. And so it did kind of put us at a standstill with opening our additional locations. But I'm not mad at that. So we are definitely going to open a location in Atlanta. We don't have the exact date. We'll aggressively be working on it in 2025. Our hopes is that we close out the purchase of the current space by the end of the first quarter of 2025, and then we can aggressively start opening our Atlanta location. But one thing that I do want people to know is that there will be an opportunity to franchise because we are definitely going the franchise model. And so if you are looking to really get into the co-working industry, there's no need for you to start from scratch because we have the model to help you be successful. And we'll definitely be sharing more of that information by the second or third quarter in 2025.
Fantastic. And folks who read the newsletter, I will make sure that we get that from Dr. Lucas and share it with all of you. Franchising is such a big play next year. And we've already said you have the special sauce, the magical sauce bottled. You are the fairy godmother. So I think this is an absolute a no-brainer. Folks who are looking to create this kind of co-working community and brand. So absolutely love that. Oh, and that's so exciting. And I love that you're buying your building because there is nothing more scary than building co-working on the red top garage. Which I'm sure you didn't bring up during like the big challenges, but I know it's at the back of almost every community owner's head. What happens if the landlord wants to do this? What happens if they want to take over the space or they want to rent this out to Amazon or whatever it is? So congrats on that.
And I do want to touch on the real estate side finding a location 8 years ago or 9 years ago, I should say, was definitely hard because no one really understood co-working, right? And again, I have three business degrees, so everything is very strategic and has to make sense from a business standpoint. And I'm also a licensed realtor, so I do understand. But when it came to reason why our real estate was never really a huge issue was because we were actually approached by the landlord of that building to come, and we were able to name our price, which is very unique and doesn't happen often. But the opportunity there, and one thing that I would definitely suggest is that at the end of the day, co-working is a real estate business, and you have to understand real estate just as much as you understand membership and sales and community building. And so Baltimore is a very unique area when it comes to commercial real estate. There's a lot of opportunity there. And as you are exploring, you have to really understand what's going on around the space where I'm interested in building my co-working space and knowing the history of those locations. Going into a new market, I've been studying the Atlanta market for a very long time. And it gives me an advantage to know, okay, I know I need to be in this location because this is where. So that market research, especially when it comes to the demographics around you and real estate, is going to be important. And then it doesn't become a huge challenge, right? Because your numbers, the industry, the area where it is, where you're going. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think a lot of people forget that you are in a real estate business and you need to understand real estate. And you really need to know how to negotiate terms and things like that for the future of your company. The first space we were in, I am pretty certain that the landlord was probably like, where did this lady come from? Because the way that I redlined the lease and the way that I negotiated the terms, because I am always thinking about contingencies. And so you really do need to work with a realtor that don't just understand real estate, but understand business. And so how do you negotiate to make sure that 5 to 10 years from now, in the up and down of the market, it works for your best interest? And in commercial real estate, this is what I tell people all the time. Everything is negotiable in commercial real estate. So if you want to negotiate that in year 5, you don't pay rent for the first quarter, you can actually do that. There's no rules against that. So be creative and be innovative, but think about your business future and the industry in itself.
Fantastic advice, and one I'm sure a lot of operators will take to heart. But you also talk about the future, and one of the reasons why I really like having this conversation now is you're in the newsletter a couple of weeks ago for a talk you gave over at the Hague. Tell us a little bit more about what that conference was about, what you learned, and what co-working spaces should probably take note of when in regard, like when you're thinking about interconnected ecosystems of cities.
Yeah, so building the Impact Fest in The Hague, which is in the Netherlands, was all around like building sustainable cities. And I actually had an opportunity to really put on all of my hat and have a discussion around what does that look like, especially in the industry that I am in. And so the co-working operator of Impact Hub New York was one of the panelists, and I am so sorry that I cannot remember the other panelist company. But I think for me, being having that opportunity to travel to the Netherlands and really participate in impact cities was just really looking at one, we are all had experiencing the same problems universally around the world, right? And there is a desire in most places to make sure that entrepreneurs had access regardless of race, sex, any demographics, that they had access and they are successful for that. But I think the important part is being very transparent about the actual issues that especially like women entrepreneurs are experiencing. I was the only woman on this panel. And the feedback that I got was thank you for saying the things that you said, because I think it's important that men understand, especially men who are not in the minority, right? Like, let's just be real of what's happening and why the trajectory for women entrepreneurs is totally different than the trajectory for male entrepreneurs, right? And I always tell people I got a big mouth, so I'm gonna use it. But I also am willing to really take all of the punches so that people that come behind me don't have to do so. And so that opportunity was really it was twofold for me. It was great to share my insight and my information, my resources, as well as my expertise. But it was also great to learn that while we're having these issues in Maryland and in Baltimore, across the country, in The Hague and in Amsterdam, they're having these similar issues. And, some people are trying to figure it out. Some aren't trying to figure it out. And so it really actually felt good to know that, one, we're not the only ones experiencing this issue. And two, that I could be a catalyst to share the information on how we're trying to build sustainable cities in various ways here in Baltimore and in the state of Maryland, and then compare that to what's happening over in The Hague, right? And so now I was able to take that information to my ecosystem partners and say, we need to look at this a little differently. And I think vice versa in hearing that. And so it was really good to experience that, but also to be part of change, to be part of impact.
Dr. Tammira Lucas, thank you for saying what needs to be said. Thank you for joining us today on the podcast. I am truly delighted and honored to be able to share your story. Folks who want to reach out to you, collaborate, maybe franchise, where's the best place for them to find you?
Yes, so you can definitely find me in the Cube on social media. So the Cube is the Cube Cowork. That's it. Just follow us. My Instagram and social media platforms is the Business Doctor, and that's business spelled out DR. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is the best way to connect and to really figure out, like, okay, what's the next steps for me in franchising your company. So as we roll out information, I can definitely add you to the list. But I do share, when I share information for the Cube, I share it on all platforms. So I'm looking forward to connecting. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. I don't take anything lightly. And because I want people to really be successful. And that is the work that I'm doing. I do the work of the Lord. And I'm going to continue to do it until I don't have any breath in me. And so I do appreciate every opportunity to share my story.
Thank you again for joining us.